In this presentation, I will outline the topic of Southeast Asia in the new international era. Before the international era arrived, several influences shaped Southeast Asian political economy. They are: the first are penetration by Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, and Christianity; colonialism, the rise of nationalism associated with the struggle for independence; and how agricultural economies are overtaken by urban-based manufacturing and service economies. There are also other facts, such as agriculture's strong economic importance has continued to decline, and recently, socio-economic picture has grown more complex, characterized by rural to urban migration, expanding non-farm work, globalized labor market, new communication technology, and rising consumerism. During the late 19th century, colonialism occurred in Southeast Asia, which is invaded by the West countries. In this period, money economy was introduced in Southeast Asia. Resource extraction also created large-scale industries requiring skilled and unskilled labor. Because rural population of Southeast Asia found industrial labor antithetical to traditional value, the colonialists imported Chinese and Indian to work in factories, tin mines, and rubber plantations. In many cases, laws prevented the immigrants from owning land and pushed them into commercial sectors. Therefore, overseas communities, the Chinese in particular, they enjoyed economic power in Southeast Asia disproportionate to the number. The European colonists were responsible for the growth of the region's first economic infrastructures of modern ports, railways, and roads. Although they stuffed their bureaucracy with local elites, offering education to the most gifted, the colonists they failed to develop institutions of accountable governance. Serving European rather than local interests, imperial administrators exploited natural resources for export and introduced new industries and economies related to trade in tin, rubber, tapioca, opium, spices, tea, etc. European governors they wholly neglected socio-economic development. Over time, the cruelty, exploitation, and injustice bred resentment. This put into motion a new force in the region, which called nationalism. A traumatic experience under Japanese occupations during World War II further fueled aspirations for self-rule and independence across the region. Following Japan's surrender in 1945 to Allied forces, Europe's post-war leaders disregarded attempts by Southeast Asian leaders to declare formal independence. Eager for resources to rebuild their own war-torn economies, the colonies audaciously returned to extend control over their previously held territories. The British in Burma and Malaya, the French in Indochina, which included Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos, the Dutch in Indonesia, and the Portuguese in East Timor. Resolve for independence hardened. In Burma, Indonesia, and Vietnam, nationalism became a unifying force that led to fierce struggle for self-determination. In Malaysia and Singapore, the struggle for independence was, however, less violent. Other aspects that needs to be discussed regarding the history of Southeast Asia is they have shared social patterns. The social patterns are religious influence, colonial history, nationalist movements. Southeast Asian nations are characterized by an agricultural base that traditionally has been the heart of their everyday life. Generally, the family farm was part of a village economy characterized subsistence productions, with most of the farm products being consumed by the family or within village. The socio-economic picture has grown increasingly complex due to a host of transformative factors. Those factors are rural to urban migration, expanding non-farm work, globalized labor market, remittance economies, new communication technology, and also rising consumerism in Southeast Asia. Over the past 50 years, the agricultural sector's importance has continued to decline relative to industry and services, although employment in the sectors remain considerable. Socioeconomically, a common pattern throughout Southeast Asia is the presence of an influential Chinese business community. The new international era in Southeast Asia is characterized by the region's boom economy from mid-1980s to mid-1990s. This economic boom resulted from the first increased trade and investment between East and Southeast Asia, also resulted from domestic entrepreneurship, and joint ventures and foreign finance enterprises expanded quickly into textile, footwear, electronics, automobile parts, cosmetic, agribusiness, petroleum refining, and etc. Double-digit economic growth and trade balance surpluses soon characterized Southeast Asia tiger economies. Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, and Indonesia fueled the region's rapid economic growth. The economic growth at that time rate 10% per year during the period. As we can see in the table, from 1977 to 1997, the economy of most Southeast Asian nations grew significantly. Thailand, for example, from 300 US dollar GNP per capita in 1977 grew significantly to become 2,970 in 1997. The same also occurred in Malaysia, Indonesia, and Philippines, and Singapore has the most tremendous growth among other Southeast Asian nations, growing from 2,000 US dollar in 1977 to become 24,000 GNP per capita in 1997. These figures, the GNP per capita for reforming and populous Vietnam, for economically stagnant Burma, Cambodia, and Laos, indicated less improvement by contrast. By 1997, per capita GNP in these countries had improved, but still averaged less than 500 US dollar. Political ideology, interstate war, and superpower meddling were no longer central concern for modern Southeast Asia. The key issues became economics, development, integrated market, and stable political development. Southeast Asia societies are also concerned with negative effects of rapid growth. They are deforestation, pollution, traffic, corruption, increased drug use, and also criminal activity. In the bigger picture, Southeast Asia benefited by no longer building walls around their countries and isolating their economies. The exception, however, was Myanmar that persisted in its strategy of socialist economy. Myanmar's dreadful standard of living only reinforced the dominant view in the region that interaction and not isolation was necessary for a country to flourish. Indeed, every Southeast Asian country that implemented open market strategy experienced economic dynamism. Economic openness then resulted in phenomenal rise in average standard of living, but success was accompanied by widening gaps between the rich and poor. It means that the gap of inequality is getting wider and wider. A classic lesson of international political economy is that economic interdependence creates greater sensitivity and vulnerability to global markets. The globalization of Southeast Asia economies had made the region's country increasingly sensitive and vulnerable to external forces and the volatility of international market. This theory is proven by financial disaster in 1997. In early 1990s, China's endless supply of cheap labor, also China devalued its currency, making their export more competitive than Southeast Asia's export. China then attracted more foreign direct investment rapidly than Southeast Asia. Export revenue in the tiger economies in Southeast Asia began to level off. By mid-90s, the current account surplus enjoyed by Southeast Asia then turned into current account deficit. With more buying power for imports, foreign product and luxury goods enter local market, causing imbalances to grow. Many remain unworried by the imbalance and move investment into new sectors. With exports slowing, Southeast Asia increasingly engaged in real estate speculation and invested in lavish projects, for example, like five-star hotels and condo. Capital inflows and easy credit also expanded in mid-90s. Local borrowers, they often denominated their loans in US dollar to take advantage of lower interest rate. Over a few short years, debt obligation mounted across Southeast Asia business community, slowing revenues from declining export and oversupply of new housing and high-rise office space, causing real estate bubble to burst. Debtors then began default. Stress on financial institutions grew, and financial mismanagement of banks began to make headlines. Corruption also drew greater attention, and democratization expanded, causing a falling regime. In June 1997, international investor confidence in Southeast Asia began to slip. Global currency traders recognized the shakiness of the region's economy. They bet against the Southeast Asia currency, undermining their worth even more. This resulted in overnight currency devaluation from country to country in Southeast Asia. Investors instigated massive outflow of capital also from Southeast Asia. Sudden devaluation of local currency combined with rapid economic contraction then left local Southeast Asia investors with massive loads of debts. Local investors they face the impossible task of meeting inflated repayment obligations in the face of declining revenue. Banks become insolvent, and this is Southeast Asia financial crisis. The region's leaders turned to the IMF, the world's lender of last resort, to help them finance their way out of the crisis. IMF, seeing itself as the economic doctor, offered multi-billion dollars loans on strict conditions. Recipient government must raise interest rate, tax rate, and implement strict budget austerity. However, it was the wrong medicine. The IMF rescue package proved damaging to already suffering economies. The cash largely went to pay off foreign creditors, and it did little to spur economic growth. Higher interest rate and tax inhibited local investment at a time when Keynesian stimulus was most desperately needed. Rather than stimulate their economies with greater public spending, governments were bound by IMF conditionality only to starve their economic further. Social and political disruption followed. Rampant unemployment, rapid inflation, this economic hardship turned into anti-government protest. The 1997 Asian economic crisis shook Southeast Asia's confidence. The crisis set Southeast Asia on disparate courses that continue to present day. Indonesia condition after the financial crisis, it sunk into deep political crisis, ending 30 years of rule under General Suharto. The collapse of his regime led not only to greater democracy, but also the birth of East Timor. In Thailand, because of the financial crisis, cycling through rotation of parliamentary coalitions with two military coups. In the Philippines, voters turned to an action movie hero to manage the recovery, only to throw him out of office for corruption a few years later. The new international era grew even more complex as a result of terrorist attacks half worldwide during the 9/11 tragedy. Prediction by Bush administration that Southeast Asia would become the second front in the war on terror, causing wider concern and anxiety in Southeast Asia. Moreover, five internationally linked bombing happened all in Indonesia. As government officials adjusted to post-9/11 world and pursued policy packages with hopes of returning to the high growth rate of the previous decade, another global concern caught attention, which is rising China. China continued outperforming Southeast Asia through the first decade of the 2000s. China has become Asia's new economic power. Since recovering from the 1997 economic crisis, only modest economic growth has returned to Southeast Asia. Vast economic disparity characterized the region. As seen in the table, Singapore economy and Brunei economy leading the region with a very high number far compared to other countries in Southeast Asia. And also country with the least economic GDP seen in the table is Myanmar and Cambodia. So this reflecting there is vast disparities between the economics of the regions. In terms of annual growth rate in the GDP in Southeast Asia countries, as we see in the table, in the Asian 5 countries, the average growth annually is 5%, while in Brunei and Singapore, they have less growth, average in 2%, which is commonly happen in developed countries that they have less number in terms of GDP growth annually. While in Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar, they have a higher growth rate, average in 7%, which this also normal in less developed country that they have a larger growth every year, because this is indicating that they are catching up economically with the more developed countries, and they started to exploit their economic better and gradually open their economy and not isolating their economy anymore.